Hi, welcome to lesson 5 of our Primavera P6 training. So here we're going to be looking at how to add activities to our project. We're going to be looking at how to add activities. Activities sometimes are referred to as tasks. In other words, these are some of the tasks that we need to perform in our project. So remember, in the last lesson, we learned how to create the work breakdown structure, which is the WBS. And we said that WBS breaks down your project and stops at the work package level. And we said that work packages are end results that we hope to accomplish in the course of the project implementation. Those are what we refer to as the work packages. So usually your WBS has, phases, say for example, phase 1, phase 2, and then phase 3. And then the phases of your project are now typically decomposed into what we now refer to as work packages. Don't forget, your phases of the decomposition of your project might differ depending on the peculiarity of your project. So this is where we are at the moment. We've created the work breakdown structure in our previous lesson. So we're now going to learn how to add activities to work packages that we have under our work breakdown structure. So these are the activities we're going to be adding. For the purpose of this exercise, we're going to be adding activities under the phase 1 of our project. Remember, phase 1 is the building system. If you were listening, if you were paying attention in the very last lesson, so phase 1 of our project is the building system. So the building system, under the building system, remember we had different work packages, which are the design, and then also the procurement, as well as the foundation. So those are the 3 work packages we had under the building system. So these are now the activities that we're going to be imputing under each of those work packages. So under the design work package, we're going to have this 6 set of activities, which includes initiate building system, which is a milestone task. So we'll learn how to create milestone tasks. Then design building layout, which has a duration of 10 days. Then design building then design building, which has a duration of 10 days as well. Then of course M&E design, that's mechanical and electrical. This has an 8-day duration. Then plumbing design, which has a 5-day duration. And then also we go for approval for our design, which we expect to, or we estimated to last for 7 days. Please don't forget that the focus of this lesson is for you to learn how to use the Primavera P6 and not really about the appropriateness of some of the activities that we have here. So this is basically for a sample project. Then under the procurement, we've also identified this set of activities with the following durations. And then also under foundation, we came up with this set of activities and then also with the following duration. So what we're going to be doing now is to learn how to be able to impute these activities in our Primavera P6. Always remember that for each of so what we're going to be doing now is to see how we can enter each of these in our Primavera P6, and that's what we're going to be doing right away. Okay, so as usual, we begin by entering. Okay, so as usual, you log into your Primavera P6 by entering your password. Okay, so once you're logged in, it brings us straight here. Don't forget that this was where we left it the last time when we were looking at the MFE project. Again, this is a reminder, just in the event you don't know how or you want to open your project, you can simply click on the open tab, or you click on the open tab in the directory bar, or you go to file and click on open, then select the project which you are working on, which is the MFE project, and then click on open project. So it brings you to this page. So we are right at the activities page for our project. So remember, we created a work breakdown structure in the previous lesson. So let's navigate back to the work breakdown structure so you get to see. So this was the WBS we created in the previous lesson, And if I navigate back to my activities page down, these are now those work packages as well as the phases of our project, essentially the work breakdown structure we created in the previous lesson. Now, don't forget that the columns you're seeing here can be changed, because much more later we're going to be looking at how to add and remove columns, but that's not the primary focus for this very lesson. So even if you have a totally different set of columns from what I have here, it's still fine. Okay, I want to do a little bit of adjustment right now. Okay, so let me remove the actual labor column because I don't want it displayed at this moment. So let me remove the actual labor column. So remember, we learned how to do this in the previous lesson. So I think that's in the lesson 2. Yes, I think that's in lesson 2. We learned how to, use the columns where we looked at, what each of these buttons in the tools bar does. So that's so I've just removed my column. So at the moment I have just about 4 columns, but if you have more than that, it's fine. And we're going to look at how to customize our columns in subsequent lessons. However, we're going to be adding activities, and as usual, to add activities to your Primavera P6, there are different ways to do that. If you take a look at the command bar, you're going to see an add button there. Then aside from that, also, if you also right click on any of the work packages that you have here, you're also going to see an add button there. And then don't forget, you can also use the insert button in your keyboard, in your laptop keyboard, depending on whichever you prefer. So these are essentially the ways you can actually add activities to your P6. So one way to do that is by clicking on add in the command bar. So if I click on add in the command bar, the exciting thing it does for me is that it brings up the new activity wizard for me. And then don't forget, it has created a new activity portion for me under the design work package. So don't forget, the first thing we're going to be doing now is to enter the activity ID. So the first thing we're going to be doing now is to enter the activity ID. So I'm going to be leaving it at the default ID, which we have here, which is the A1000. And right after that, I'm going to be entering the activity name. So if you remember what we had in that particular exercise, the first activity that we have for under the building system, which is under the design work package, the first activity we have is initiate the first activity we have is initiate building. So we have initiate building as the first activity. So once you've done that, you can click on next. It will ask you under what package do you want this activity. So you can see our activity is already positioned under the right work package. Otherwise, I can click on the browse button and then select the relevant work package where I want this activity to be located, which is of course also exactly where I want it already. So once that's the case, you click on next. It will ask you activity type. Now, of course, activity type, the task dependent activities is what most of your activities would be, and then task dependent simply means it's going to be dependent on other tasks, or other tasks will be dependent on it. But this very activity is a milestone from the exercise, so we are going to be choosing a start milestone for this very activity. And then when you click on next, it will ask you whether would you like to assign predecessor or successor activities. So we're not going to be doing that at the moment because we have not created relationships yet. We're going to be looking at subsequent lessons that teach us how to create relationships. So we're going to be leaving it at no continue. So you click on next. So when you click on next, it will ask whether you want to impute more details, especially the expense for the activity code, work products, and documents. Well, because we don't want to impute all of those details, so we'll still leave it at no thanks. And then we click on next. So when we click on next, we'll get a congratulatory message telling us that our activity has successfully been added. Don't forget, if at any point in time you don't want this wizard to show up again, you can simply check do not show this wizard again, but we're going to be needing the wizard, so I'm just going to leave it. So you click on finish once you've created the activity. So you can see we've created a very first activity for this project, which is initiate building, and it's a milestone task. So you notice milestones have 0 duration, so that's why you're seeing 0 duration here as, you know, the duration for this very activity. And then you will also notice, okay, let me turn off the progress spotlight so that at least this is a little bit conspicuous. So you will also notice that in my Gantt you can see the milestone symbol looks like a stone. Yeah, it looks like, you know, a stone. So that essentially shows you that yes, this activity is a milestone task. Okay, so now that we've added our first activity, the next is to add the second activity. And remember, our second activity is design building layout, which has a duration of 10 days. So I come back to my Primavera P6 again. I can also use the add button in the command bar, and if it brings up the wizard, I leave the activity ID at the default ID. Then under the activity name, I type in the activity name for this very activity. I type in the activity name for this very activity, and remember the activity name is design building layout. So I type in design building layout. Okay, so as usual, I can click on the next button. I want it under the design work package, so it's, you know, exactly which is under the building system, so it's exactly where I want it to be. Then I can click on next. So this is a task dependent activity, so I'm going to leave it at task dependent. In other words, it's going to depend on other tasks, and then other tasks would also be dependent on it. So I click on next. It will ask me to assign resources. We're not going to be assigning resources yet because we have other lessons that will teach how to assign resources. So we keep clicking on next, and we're going to be leaving at the duration type at the fixed duration and unit, and then you keep clicking on next. So it will ask you for the activity unit and duration. So under the activity duration, we're going to be leaving it under the activity duration. Remember from what we had earlier, we said that this is a 10-day duration activity, so we changed the activity duration to 10 days, and then also we're going to be leaving the labor units at the default values. And then of course it will ask us if we want to create dependencies, that's assign predecessors or successors to these activities. We are not going to do that yet, so you click on next, and then we're not going to add more details until you get to the congratulations page, and then you click on finish. So we've added another activity, which is design building layout, that has a duration of 10 days, and that's what we have done so far. So next we're going to add the next activity, which is activity 3. So if you notice, activity 3 is the design building, which is also another 10-day task. So to add this activity, I can use another method simply by right clicking and then clicking on add. So when I do that, you notice that the wizard doesn't come up if you use this very option. So sometimes it's a lot more easier for you to use the option, especially if you don't want to use the wizard. Okay, so I'm going to type in the next activity now, which is design building. And this activity is a 10-day duration activity, so I put in 10 days there. Now, you notice that as I enter the activities, you see them display in your Gantt. If your Gantt is not showing, don't forget you can use the scroll button to display your Gantt to the relevant so that it can show up, or you simply double click, you know, in 2 double successions. If I double click in my Gantt, it will also display your Gantt, you know, chart for you. Okay, however, I just created this activity without using the wizard. If you notice also, if I now take a look at the detail view, most of the information I have in the wizard is displayed in the detail view. For example, if I go to the general tab, you can see we have activity type here, which was where we determine whether this is a task dependent activity or it was a milestone task or any other, nomenclature. Remember we said this is a task dependent activity. Then also the duration type, and then also you're going to see a calendar type here, and then also responsible manager and primary resource person, then under which work package you want it to be in. So these are some of the things you see in the detail view, and most of those things that you saw in the wizard, they're also in the detail view. So you can choose to customize your activities from the detail view if you prefer to do it that way. We can add resources here, create the dependencies from this place and all of that. So that's essentially part of the things that the detail view does. Don't forget that for your detail view, just in case some of these tabs are not showing, you can choose to display the tabs or remove some of the tabs that are currently being displayed in your detail view. All you simply need to do is right click in the detail view and then click on customize activity details. So if you notice, the display tabs that I have here are the ones that are currently displayed in my detail view. Otherwise, I can choose to add any other activity, any other tab that I want to display in my detail view. For example, I want to add relationships, and then also probably I want to add expenses. Okay, so I can click on apply. So once I click on apply, you can see relationships and expenses show up here, and then I click on OK. So that's how to display your tabs, just in case you don't have some of these relevant tabs. And like I mentioned earlier on, you can also do your tweaking from here, just like we saw in the wizard. Okay, so we've created the third activity. Next, we're going to create the next activity. So the next activity is M&E design. This time around, I'm going to be using the insert button on my keyboard. So I click on the insert button. So when I click on the insert button, it creates a space for me to enter new activity. And then I type in the next activity, which is M&E design. And then I enter the duration for this very activity, which is 8 days. Okay, so you just type in 8 there and then hit enter. And then the next activity is plumbing design. So to enter the plumbing design, I also use the insert button on my keyboard and then I type in plumbing design. And plumbing design has 5-day duration, so I'm going to be leaving it at the 5-day default value, and then I add the last activity, which in this case is design approval. And we said that the design approval is a 7-day duration task, so I simply enter 7 days there. Okay, so I've entered these activities, 6 of them under the design work package, under the building system phase of my project. And if you notice, Primavera would create a start date and finish date for each of these activities. But beyond that also, you notice that all the activities seem to commence on the same day. And then usually Primavera would pick the activity with the longest duration and then use that as the duration for that very work package. And then because we've not entered any other activity, then don't forget that our phase is showing also that it's a 10-day project, and then also the project is showing a 10-day project. Now the reason is because we have not created dependencies, and that's, you can, so as you can see from here, all the activities are starting on the same day and then they're all running concurrently, and that's why you're having this duration this way. So next we're going to enter activities under the procurement work package. So under the procurement work package, we have the plan procurement, advertise for bid, conduct bidder conferences, carry out vendor bid analysis, and select vendor, and then inspect procured items. So another way you can enter your activities is to determine the number of activities that you have under that very work package. For example, under the procurement work package, I have 6 activities there, and then I can simply create 6 different I can simply insert 6 cells under the procurement work package. So all I simply need to do is I hit insert on my keyboard and then enter, and then also I repeat it for the next couple of and then I repeat it for about 5 times, and then I repeat it for about 6 times. Don't forget, just in case you don't have an insert button in your keyboard, you can also right click and click on add, and then also once you've done that, again you right click and then click on add, then hit enter, then right click again and then click on add. So I have portion for 6 activities here. So remember, the first activity I had under procurement was plan procurement. So I type in plan procurement, and then after the plan procurement had a duration, and then plan procurement had a duration of 5 days. So I leave it at 5. Then after that, I have advertise for bid. Advertise for bid. And this has a 1-day duration. And then next I have conduct bidder conferences. Which also is a 1-day activity, so I type in 1 day here. Then I have carry out vendor bid analysis. Which is a 2-day task. Then next I have select vendor. And this is a 1-day task. And then finally I have inspect procured item. Which is also another 1-day task. Now, don't forget that sometimes when you're entering your durations, Primavera might sort according to the activity durations. First of all, what do we mean by sorting? If you notice under my activity ID column, there is a particular inscription here that looks like an arrow pointing down. So this shows me that my activities are sorted according to activity ID, starting from the first to the last. And that's what this is showing. So if I click on it, for example, if I click on this activity ID column, you would notice that the sorting pattern will change. It will turn upside down. So let me click on it so you can see the sorting pattern has changed, and I'm seeing it differently from the way it used to be before. So you can see activity A1000 has come least in this very work package. Then also A1050 has become the first. So if I want to reverse it, I can click again on the activity ID. So it's sorting according to activity ID. So why I'm saying so is because sometimes people can mistakenly maybe click on, let's say, activity name, for example. So you notice that it's now sorting according to the activity names instead of sorting according to the activity ID. So sometimes I've come across a lot of students who complain about that the activities are scattered or they are not arranged in the correct order. So it might just be a sorting problem. So that's basically what I try to do here, so that you know exactly, because any column you're clicked upon, you're going to see an inscription showing you that yes, your project is currently sorted according to that column, and you want to make sure that you're always sorted according to your activity ID. If I click on original duration, for example, you can see it's now sorted according to duration, starting from the least to the highest duration for each of the work packages that we have so far. Okay, good. So that's one key thing you need to be aware of, especially with respect to sorting. So always remember, sort according to your activity ID. All right, so we've entered activities now under the building system, under the two work packages, which is design as well as procurement. So next we're going to enter the activities under the very last work package, which is the foundation. So as usual, so foundation has 7 tasks. So I can simply create portion for 7. I can simply add 7 cells under foundation to enable me enter the task that I have under foundation. So I can now begin to enter the activities that I have under foundation. So these are some of the activities. I have clearing and then setting out. So I have clearing, that's clearing of the site. This is a 5-day task, so I'm going to leave it at 5 days. Then I have setting out. I will say that setting out is 1 day, so I enter 1 there. And after setting out, the next activity is excavating. So I simply enter excavating. And excavating will be done for 10 days. And then the next activity under excavating is blinding. And blinding is going to take us an additional 10 days. And then right after blinding, the next activity we have is block work. And block work, we said, is going to take us 20 days. And then after block work, we have filling. And we said that filling is going to take us 5 days. So we'll leave it at the default. And then you now have the slab. That's the floor slab. And we said the floor slab will last for 10 days. Okay, good. So we've entered activities now under our work packages, which is basically what we displayed earlier on. I can bring down my detail view, so to make this a little bit more conspicuous. I can bring down my detail view to make this a bit more conspicuous. Okay, so this is essentially what we have so far. So we've been able to enter these activities under the work packages that we have in our Primavera P6. So we entered the activities, and then also we entered the duration of these very activities. So in a nutshell, we created activities under the work packages that we have in our Primavera P6. And not just creating the activities, we also created the activity durations, and then we also learned how to create milestone tasks, and then also how to be able to display all of that in our Gantt view. I hope this very lesson has been very informative for you. The next lesson we're going to be looking at would be how to create relationships that exist between our project activities. And that's what we're going to be looking at in the very next lesson. I hope this particular video has been very informative for you. I want to thank you for listening and see you in the next lesson. Thank you.